Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. A long time ago, we did a video on the top things that the Navy hates about Iowa-class battleships, the things they would change. That's linked in the description below if you haven't seen it yet, but that's an old video. We're talking about remaking it. Today, we're going to do a video about the top 5 things that the Navy loved about the Iowa-class battleships. Decisions and things that were done in the design process that made it so that these ships were chosen to be reactivated in the 1980s, and likely the reasons that would be cited if Iowa-class battleships were ever to be brought back to active service. So, the first thing that the Navy really loves about Iowa-class battleships, the major thing that sets them apart from all other American battleships, is their speed. The 33 knot speed of Iowa-class battleships allowed them to operate alongside the fleet carriers during World War II. After World War II, it gave them the speed to go around the world and act as a potent deterrent, even though, while the US had numerous carrier battle groups that they could just keep positioned all over the place or rotate around, they did not have nearly so many battleships. But the speed of the Iowas and their sea-keeping ability, i.e. their ability to maintain that speed even in rough weather compared to other fast ships, allowed them to get to places where deterrents were needed. For example, during the Vietnam War, New Jersey is on her way home, and a series of international incidents starts to kick off, including North Vietnam shooting down an American spy plane. So New Jersey is able to be rapidly redirected to the north, and as it turns out, that incident is resolved diplomatically and the ship isn't needed. However, most transoceanic voyages that New Jersey goes on end up with some sort of high-speed run to go plug some other diplomatic hole that's opened up. In 1983, New Jersey is operating in the Pacific, and the Lebanese Civil War hits a new high point, so New Jersey is rapidly sent across the Atlantic into the Mediterranean. Completely unplanned, no escorts, she just hightails it across the ocean. So this speed and ability to act as a deterrent is something that the Navy loves about the Iowa-class battleships that none of the other previous classes had. So that's the number 5 thing that the Navy loves about Iowa-class battleships. Let me talk about something I love. Blinkist is an app that allows you to understand the most important things from over 5,500 nonfiction books and podcasts in about just 15 minutes each. With the help of Blinkist, you can discover new perspectives, broaden your horizons, have exciting conversations, and experience aha moments. I like Blinkist because I'm working 2 jobs and writing a book right now. I do not have time to read full-length books. However, releasing one of these videos every single day requires me to learn something new every single day. And Blinkist, taking up just 15 minutes of my time while I'm driving to or from work, allows me to do that. A feature I love is Blinkist Connect. This allows every Blinkist premium plan to be shared by 2 different accounts. It's no additional cost to you, and it's free to the person who you invite for as long as you're sharing it with them. That means me and my camera person can find new inspiration together. For me, I just finished listening to their Blink On War by von Clausewitz. This has been one of those books that's been on my list to read for a long time, but I've never had the time to tackle it. And honestly, books like that are a pain for me to sit there and read. But it's one of those critical books for military historians to understand. And Blinkist allowed me to do that by breaking their report up into the exact same chapters that von Clausewitz originally broke them up into back in the 19th century.
It's a challenging work, made all the more so by the fact that it was unfinished when the author died. But that's why your friends at Blinkist are here.
Get 25% off Blinkist Premium and enjoy 2 memberships for the price of 1. Start your 7-day free trial at the link in the description below. Our number 4 thing that the Navy loves about Iowa-class battleships? Their Panamax capabilities. Not just are they Panamax, a lot of Navy ships are, but they're close to the largest thing you can make Panamax. The Navy had to make a tremendous number of sacrifices in the design of this ship to make them able to fit through the Panama Canal. But baby, it was worth it. These ships are able to transition quickly through the major areas of responsibility that American foreign policy dictates. Battleship New Jersey had to transition the Panama Canal on 10 separate occasions. 9 of them in active service and 1 to become a museum, but repeatedly over her career. Larger capital ships like the nuclear carriers have to go all the way around South America through the Straits of Magellan. They're not capable of going through the Panama Canal. And that began just after World War II with the Midway-class aircraft carriers. The Iowa-class battleships retained that capability throughout their whole career. So just like they're able to transition from where they're built in the Atlantic to the Pacific to fight in World War II, they're then able to transition from the major yards where their maintenance work and major upgrades are performed on the East Coast and back and forth. And even in the 1980s, when the Navy intentionally decides 2 are going to be permanently in the Atlantic, 2 are going to be permanently in the Pacific, they still end up transitioning New Jersey through the Panama Canal to deal with the Lebanese Civil War. Our number 3 reason the Navy loves the Iowa-class battleships, especially in the 1980s, nobody else has them. The Iowa-class battleships became a tremendous propaganda tool because nobody else in the world had them. During World War II, these ships were pretty average, a little bit above average because they were larger and more expensive and therefore had room for more capabilities than your average battleship. But they were still recognized as having weaknesses and vulnerabilities, especially when they're compared to foreign countries' battleships. By the 1980s, nobody else is operating battleships. So on the one hand, these seem like an invulnerable weapon system that helped end the Cold War by completely outspending the Soviet Union's ability to project power. On the other hand, they were a tremendous recruitment tool for the Navy. When New Jersey was brought back to service, she had some 1,500 billets to fill, yet some 6,000 sailors reached out to try and get on her plank holder crew. Likewise, the other Iowa-class battleships entering service also had rushes to be able to man them. A man be not a man unless he has served on a battleship. And in the 1980s and 90s, the only opportunity for that was the Iowa-class battleships. So at a time when the United States Navy is competing with recruitment with the Army, the Air Force, other services, and other civilian things like the Peace Corps, the Public Health Service, other important roles, the Navy was able to roll these ships out and then use them as powerful propaganda tools. And we see that in them being used pretty frequently in things like music videos, Cher Turning Back Time, and movies such as Under Siege. Our number 2 reason why the Navy absolutely adores the Iowa-class battleships is their reserve of buoyancy. Remember, this baby got aft. She has a huge displacement, and that means that she has more room for growth than contemporary ships. When the Navy was looking to deploy the Tomahawk cruise missile, they wanted to do it in numbers. And so they looked at older ships that they had laying around that were a good size. They had ships like Des Moines and Salem, large, heavy cruisers sitting in the reserve fleet. They would have been cheaper to bring back, but they would have carried fewer missiles. And so the Iowa-class battleships were specifically chosen because of their capabilities to take all of these modern technologies. These ships were built in the 1940s. They have no right to be a first-line battle group centerpiece in the 1980s and 90s. And yet, they had the room to install 32 Tomahawks, 16 Harpoons, 4 Phalanxes, and both a modern communication suite and a modern radar fit. All things that had not been even thought of when these ships were originally built. Most other ships age out because they reach a point when they can no longer take new technology. There's no room for weight. Many World War II built ships, especially the Baltimore and Cleveland class cruisers, the next largest ships in the fleet besides the battleships, were aged out of service because they could not even take late World War II electronics fits compared to the early war stuff they were designed with. That was never a major issue for the Iowa-class battleships. And fortunately, the removal of older things like the World War II anti-aircraft guns freed up space for these newer technologies. And finally, that brings us to our last thing that the Navy loves about Iowa-class battleships. But before I go into that, drop a comment in the comment section down below. What are some things that you think that the Navy loves about Iowa-class battleships that we didn't mention here? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, and if there's anything you bring up that wasn't covered in my section. In particular, I didn't mention the ship's armor or survivability at all. I don't think that makes the top 5 list. I think the Iowa-class battleships, while they have impressive armor in the 1980s time period, are relatively mediocre in World War II and are still very vulnerable to certain weapons types in the 1980s. It's the propaganda of their invulnerability that makes them special and not true invulnerability. So, without further ado, our number one thing that the Navy loves about Iowa-class battleships is their guns. The whole reason you bring these ships back is to get that firepower. No other class of ship since the Iowas have been able to deliver that sort of firepower. The United States Navy still operates a military built on suppressing enemy forces so that you can call in massive artillery or aerial bombardments. However, those systems just get more and more and more expensive, and the more technological they get, the easier they are to counter. Heavy air defense systems are able to negate aircraft and precision munitions relatively easily. However, no defensive system ever built, not something as simple as armor or as sophisticated as air-to-air missiles, has been developed to shoot down a 16-inch projectile. These 1-ton exploding munitions are highly accurate even with their 1940s era fire control and can do tremendous damage cheaply. Essentially, it's free. We paid for this during World War II. Everything that was used basically from then on out, with relatively few exceptions, was stuff that we built during World War II and had already been bought and paid for. So it's relatively free to drop as many of these on a target as it takes to make it go away, in all weather conditions, which you can't fly in, and without the threat of being shot down, losing a multi-million-dollar platform, losing highly skilled personnel such as pilots and aircrew. And that then ties back into a number of the other points. It makes these ships a potent deterrent. It makes these ships a potent propaganda tool. And so those are my top 5 things. Again, let me know if you agree with them. Do you think I had them in the right order? Would you change that up some? Let us know in the comment section down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. In particular, we'd like to thank the sponsor of today's video, Blinkist. Remember that you can get 25% off a Blinkist premium account and enjoy 2 memberships for the price of 1. There's a link in the description below that will allow you to start a 7-day trial. And if you like it as much as I did, maybe you'll continue with that. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about the museum and our channel. Thanks for watching.